Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. This is a place for vibrant discussions about mindfulness, movement practices, and ways to find more balance and presence in daily life. Here you'll find resources to help you progress on your path, as well as insightful conversations with mindful movement, yoga, meditation, and Dharma teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight embodied approaches to mindfulness and the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 102 of the podcast. I really love saying the episode numbers now that we have cracked 100. But thanks for stopping by today. Today I'm going to be talking about how mindful movement can be a form of cross-training for your awareness. I'm borrowing this idea of cross-training from the fitness world because it's kind of an interesting way, I think, to look at how mindful movement and meditation might fit together. So as we explore this topic of cross-training, we'll get into how mindful movement is a form of dynamic meditation and how it can also be super beneficial for people who do traditional sitting meditation because it challenges you to apply your meditative skills and be aware amidst more stimulation and complexity. You'll also hear a bit about a few different types of movement as I reflect on what they've brought to my own deepening and expanding of awareness over time. If you'd like to play with some of the examples of the kinds of mindful movement practices that I'm talking about here, you can always find resources in my online class library. I have gentle yoga, yin yoga, somatic practices, and qigong sessions in there, as well as mixed mindful movement classes that bring multiple styles together. In the class library, you'll find an approach to movement that really centers mindfulness and that develops the meditative qualities of movement. There are full memberships, and there's also a free tier to the class library, which gives you access to a rotation of 5 different classes each month. And yes, that is totally free. You can find those resources at movedtomeditate.yoga/class library. And if you are ready to go deeper with your awareness cross-training and feeling inspired to learn how to offer these practices to others, the Mindful Movement Teacher Training will be starting this month on October 19th. In case you haven't heard of this or looked into this yet, the Mindful Movement Teacher Training, or MMTT, is an interdisciplinary movement program that draws from all the different movement modalities you're going to hear me talk about today to explore movement as an accessible form of meditation. The training emphasizes versatile, adaptable, and practical movements that you can share in a variety of different settings to help people regulate their nervous systems, ease their aches and pains, and find meaning through embodied contemplative experiences. It's a live online program that starts once a year, and it's coming right up, so get the details at movedtomeditate.yoga/MMTT and apply today. Okay, let's get into this. How is mindful movement like cross-training for your awareness? We all know this concept from fitness, right? Cross-training is the idea that it's healthy to round out your routine with different forms of exercise like cardio, strength, endurance, mobility, flexibility, so you get maximum physical benefits. You might be more of a runner who does a little bit of weight training, or a lifter who does some cardio conditioning on the side, or a dancer who also does Pilates, but you cross-train because you know that each of those activities offers something to your overall fitness and that it probably makes you better at the ones you enjoy the most. So, what if we applied this idea to mindfulness? Just like there are different aspects of physical fitness, there are also many different aspects of mindfulness, including connection to the body, balancing our emotions, steadying our focus, observing our thought patterns, and cultivating positive qualities like compassion and equanimity, just to name a few. Traditional meditation certainly develops all of those mindfulness muscles, but we can also exercise them through mindful movement. And I would suggest that cross-training with both movement and stillness practices gives us a wider palette to explore all of the ways that we can be present with our moment-to-moment experience. If you're a meditator in the traditional sense, I think that's awesome. And I'm not here to tell you that you're not doing enough. But I would like to say that you can keep developing your meditation through any other movement or exercises and activities that you might already be doing. Likewise, if you have found more traction with moving meditation and haven't really found a groove with sitting still, please ignore anyone who tells you that your meditation isn't real meditation or that it's just the warm-up to real meditation. There are so many mindfulness skills to be learned in movement and so many dynamic experiences of meditation to be had in motion. If you are moving with the intention to practice meditation, it counts. And the more you embrace that, the more you can find ways to build on and deepen that and deepen into the meditative aspects of what you're doing. I am a big fan of having both in my life, movement meditation and stillness meditation. I think of these as different types of meditation that exist on a spectrum from movement to stillness. Stationary meditations do have some different benefits than moving ones, and vice versa. Or you might say they bring forward different aspects of mindful awareness. This is something I want to talk about more in another episode, but for now, my point is that whether the meditation is dynamic or stationary, it has value. Each is a valid way to meditate on its own, and at different times in life, a person may be drawn more to sitting or moving or a particular movement modality or a particular type of meditation. If our practice is going to go the distance and support us throughout life, we have to meet ourselves where we are and let ourselves evolve, right? That is definitely what my practice journey has been like. So I feel like it's given me a certain perspective on what different movement modalities can bring to the table in terms of meditation. I started my yoga practice in 1998. I was in college then. Now you know how old I am. And then I found insight meditation, also known as Vipassana or mindfulness, in 2007. So I had been meditating for a few years before I trained to teach yoga and started doing that and teaching movement. So I would say that for a really long time, I've looked at my movement practice through a meditative lens in a lot of ways. However, it's taken me many years to really understand how these different forms of practice work together and to appreciate how the movement and stillness are simply different dimensions of one practice and one lived experience, really. So let's take a look at a few movement modalities through a lens of mindfulness to flesh out how they might help cross-train our meditative skills. In my personal movement practice and my teaching, I consistently work with gentle and yin yoga, somatic movement, and qigong. Of course, each of these practices has excellent benefits for health and wellness, and they are often seen primarily through that perspective. What we hear about less often is how these movement styles could help us develop meditative qualities like presence, embodiment, sustained attention, non-judgmental awareness, self-compassion, and insight. So I'll start with yoga because it was the first movement style I learned. Yoga has helped me wake up sensation and body awareness while also developing a vocabulary for those sensations and a capacity to be with them. When I first started yoga, I was a very tense young person. I couldn't really feel much that was going on in my body beyond the constricted, hard feeling of bracing against stress. The postures and movements of yoga began to melt enough of that armor so that I could feel other sensations and connect to areas that previously seemed dormant. I also found that yoga helped me to name and differentiate between different types of sensations: stretch or effort, release, tension or pain, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations, physical sensations versus emotional feelings. I discovered a rich world of embodiment and a greater awareness of my emotional world. I think my mindfulness practice really helped give me a language for those sensations and experiences, but the yoga, asana, and breath practices put me in direct touch with the body in a tangible way. Yin yoga in particular taught me a lot about being with sensations, allowing them without immediately reacting to change them. In yin yoga, you are encouraged to stay with the experience and soften around it. Yin gave me a lot of practice in suspending my interpretations and judgments so that I could just be with the experience as it is. Those are some of the exact same things we also practice in mindfulness meditation. And yin yoga, by nature of the fact that you're going into a stretch and holding it for a few minutes, it's like a mini meditation that will predictably offer you the opportunity to encounter sensation and to practice relating to it mindfully. So it's a great cross-training opportunity for mindfulness of the body. A bit later on in my journey, I was introduced to practices like Hana somatics and Feldenkrais. Somatic exercises like these often focus on tiny little gestures that might be the building block of something more complex, whether that's a movement that you want to learn how to do or do better, or a tension pattern that you want to unwind. I found that this subtle way of working with the body in somatics helps refine attention and can help us learn to sustain our awareness on things that are quieter and less dramatic. It can both sharpen and steady our focus, and it can help continue developing our receptivity, curiosity, and non-judgmental awareness. By tuning into the subtle, we learn to see more deeply, more clearly, and just more of what's going on. That's a huge deal for mindfulness practice. Yes, it enhances our body awareness, but that ability to pay attention in such a refined way also translates to being able to bring that sensitivity and focus to other experiences as well. And because somatic practices tend to be very exploratory and rather not goal-oriented, that really supports our ability to come to a practice without expectations and agendas. And that is super important in meditation, and it also helps us in a lot of life situations and relationships, right? When we can come to it with less expectations and agendas. So those are some of the ways I see somatics as great cross-training for awareness. Qigong has been the most recent addition to my practice repertoire, but it's become hugely important to me over the last 4 years or so. And there's a lot of variety within this movement style, but I particularly find that Qigong helps with clearing emotional reactivity, regulating the nervous system, and cultivating meditation in motion as we drop into simple movement flows. I use a lot of clearing practices from Qigong that help me process, make space for, and or disperse energy and agitation and emotional charge. Taking a few minutes for clearing and nervous system hygiene before meditation can really reduce restlessness and that proverbial monkey mind so that we can actually settle in a natural and unforced way. And doing simple clearing practices periodically through the day also helps me stay more grounded and present and to avoid having the pressures and irritations of the day just build up and feed into reactive habit patterns. That kind of cross-training really supports awareness and the ability to stay true to our intentions so we can respond to life with clarity, kindness, and equanimity. Then you have the graceful Qigong flows, which can be an amazing opportunity to let go into more effortless movement. Because these flows are really simple, not too strenuous, and they are repeated patterns that we do for a few minutes, there's a lot less to get hung up on. We don't need to keep thinking about anatomy and technique the whole time. And while you could focus on the health benefits or how a form might stimulate a certain meridian line or move chi in a certain way, you can also just get into a rhythm and be with the movement, the sensations, and the breath. You can keep moving gently, but notice thoughts and feelings as they arise, or actively cultivate wholesome intentions like kindness, patience, or gratitude while in this active form of meditation. Some of the gestures of Qigong really lend themselves to folding in the heart practices. Like imagine an outward arm gesture accompanied with the intention to send metta or loving kindness to other beings. And then as the arms return back towards you, the intention would be to receive or offer yourself that goodwill. That's a super simple example, but there are plenty of ways that the gentle repetition of Qigong flows can help cultivate presence in movement, very similar to the way that walking meditation does. Or that Qigong can be a vehicle for expressing and invoking wisdom qualities. With these examples, you might imagine how mindful movement can often be the most accessible way to introduce mindfulness skills, especially for those who aren't drawn to meditation or who struggle with the stillness aspect or literally feel too stressed to meditate, too stressed to sit still. But I also want to highlight that even if you do enjoy the stillness of meditation, you can expand your practice and gain insight from mindful movement. Mindful movement is more dynamic than sitting. Just the act of moving adds stimulation and complexity, and it generates more sensory experiences to be aware of. I think this makes mindful movement a really interesting way to train our capacity for staying present in daily life, where things are definitely coming at us at a quicker pace and with more intensity and less predictability often. That's a kind of cross-training that can prepare us for mindful living. I think I want to close with the last few thoughts about the hierarchies we sometimes place on practices and how we sometimes consider one to be more advanced than another. A lot of times those ideas are not really that useful, and they can cause us to miss out on learning opportunities. But in some circles, there can really be a tendency to think of mindful movement or yoga asana, the physical part of yoga, as more preliminary, like preparations for stillness and meditation, which are considered more advanced. These movement practices do help us prepare for stillness, but that's not all they have to offer. Hopefully what I've described throughout this episode illustrates that. When I say that mindful movement is meditation, I'm not necessarily saying that it's the same as seated meditation or that it feels the same or does the exact same thing. For example, the utter simplicity of meditating in stillness creates better conditions for deep experiences of concentration. The stillness lends itself to those very absorbed states. I'm just saying that one is not better than the other. They are both valid entry points, and they have a lot to teach us for the entire duration of our path. To go back to the fitness analogy, we don't think of running as being more advanced than deadlifting or swimming being more advanced than Pilates, right? Even though the deadlifts might make you a stronger runner because they develop your hamstrings, and Pilates might give your swimming a boost through enhanced core strength. Those activities might contribute something to each other, but that doesn't imply a hierarchy. Those different exercises are all just training the body in unique and valuable ways. So I prefer to think of all these different mindfulness practices as an amazing array of options for training in awareness, wisdom, and compassion. I've leaned more into movement or more into stillness at various times over the 25 years I've been practicing. And all of these techniques and forms and teachings have all been useful. They have different strengths and different insights to offer. How about you? I hope this topic has you thinking about what you've learned from the practices you've tried, and maybe it sparks an interest in how you might cross-train and explore in a new area. Mindfulness is a big terrain, and there are a lot of ways to approach the path. They can all lead us toward a richer, more meaningful, more wakeful life. Thanks so much for listening today. I will be back with another interview episode in a few weeks, but don't forget to check out my website for resources if you want to explore some mindful movement cross-training in the meantime. Be well until then. So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find it that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, courses, or teacher trainings, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. This is Addie D. Hilster. Thanks so much for listening.